independent and perfect government, establish justice, ensure tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the state of Colorado. Thank you. Have a seat. I got some line in there. Okay, approval of the agenda. I make a motion to amend the agenda. Do I have a second? No, not necessary?
No, but, sorry, just to say what it was.
Oh, I need to amend. Need to amend the agenda to, we were supposed to have the varsity baseball team come in with their coach, and we were going to do some congratulating. Under the circumstances, the weather, and us not knowing what it was going to look like this afternoon, the baseball coach opted to move this to another time, probably in June, to recognize them. They're doing very well. Could I have a motion to approve?
Second. Or motion to
You're
approve.
making
Yeah,
the
you're
motion.
making the motion. Do you want me a second?
Yes.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Arkley? Aye. Bates?
Aye.
Kimball? Aye. Patterson? Aye. Resterholz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, Board of Education reports. Does anyone have anything?
Sorry, we need to.
We need to approve the
Oh.
actual agenda.
Okay, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Arkley?
Aye.
Bates?
Aye.
Kimball? Aye. Patterson? Aye. Resterholz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you everyone for keeping me in line. Okay, Board of Education reports.
So first, I actually had an in-person meeting for work on Monday, which doesn't happen all that often. But while we were chatting, one of my coworkers lives in Colorado Springs, and her son is in 8th grade and does travel basketball. And she said that she had run into a middle school team from Woodland Park, coached by Ramon Soto. And she just expressed how impressed she was with our basketball players, what a great job the coach was doing, and how wonderful it was because they're pretty new to the travel scene. And just, how she was really just very impressed with how they were showing up and able to compete at that level when they were so new. So I wanted to share that with everyone.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I was really excited to hear it. And then the other thing is just kind of a reminder, the parents and students and teachers probably don't need a reminder for this, but it's a super busy time of year for everyone. And there's a tremendous amount of effort going into all of the end of school activities and concerts and performances and projects. And I just want to express my appreciation for everyone for all the hard work that they're doing. And just a reminder that school is almost over and you just have to hang on a little bit longer.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, yes, that was all.
Thank you. Others?
Well, on Monday, Mick and I attended the teacher appreciation lunch, and we were just really impressed with all the teachers, impressed with the staff, the smiles, especially our staff, and Candace, Ginger, Aaron, Patty, Lindsay, and if there's anyone else I'm missing, there's people I'm missing. The cook.
Jason.
Oh, Jason.
Yeah, and so they did all the prep work, all the stuff. It was just so awesome to be there with you guys, so thank you. And it was good to see just the kids and everyone. You can tell everyone's sort of sensing the end of school and excited about it, so appreciate your comments, Keegan, because it's very much noticeable. But we had a great time, and I
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to piggyback that. Yesterday, we had the barbecue at Summit, and the weather was not cooperative. And Jason and his helper cooked burgers. Fortunately, there's a little one-man car garage, so they weren't out in it, but it was coarse. And it went very well. I was just sharing with Ms. Rexford that they were, I mean, everyone was happy and laughing and teasing around with one another. There's some games going on in the building that they're participating in. And it was a wonderful environment, and we had a lot of fun. And again, as Cassie said, the girls and the guys worked their keisters off to pull that off, and it was much more difficult under the circumstances yesterday. But all we still lack is Columbine, and it's sounding right now, talking to Candace, that probably next Tuesday we'll get Columbine in. Sue, anything?
I'd like to report that Mick and I on Monday evening went to the high school and saw 13 seniors juniors going into to be seniors, inducted into a ceremony for the National Honor Society, 13 students, and we're very proud of them, and the outgoing seniors were very, very kind to the ones that were coming up, and they took their
Keys.
yes off and laid them over the shoulders of the new. So we had 13 students who were pretty proud of them.
I thought that was a wonderful idea that the previous year's honor roll did the presenting. They were very good at it. That was nice. Anything else? Okay, well.
I have some. Can you hear me there?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
All right, great. Well, looking forward to Monday evening at 6 p.m. Sure. Thank you so much. Either. My undisclosed probable location.
Just-
There, but, anyway. See you there by midnight. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David, and I apologize for not sharing that you were remote today, but I'll bet everyone knows now. Thank you. All right, Mr. Salt.
Thank you. So I think probably the first and most important thing on my list is update on the CFO search. We interviewed 4 applicants, Courtney and I did a couple weeks ago. Of those, 2 of them, we decided to kind of put forward as finalists and invite them in. One of them is out of state, the other is local to the Springs, and so we'll have them in on Monday to do interviews. In-person interviews, it'll be a little lengthy. I kind of explained the process in the email I sent to the board, but we'll have breakfast with one candidate and lunch with the other from the board's perspective, so you guys can get a chance to meet them and talk with them, ask questions that you have, and then we've got more time scheduled here for them to meet the team, the finance team, and then to work with the executive team. So we'll have plenty of opportunity to grill them, and then we'll have hopefully a single finalist coming out of that group that we can move forward with.
That's very good.
Yeah, we're excited about that. Any questions?
I do. Do you have notes from your interviews earlier, from like the initial interviews that we can take a look at going into it, just to see what their answers were to whatever questions you already asked?
I have the questions that we asked. I actually didn't take a lot of notes on that. Courtney and I just kind of recapped afterwards. So I don't have notes. I have the resumes I can send you if you want to take a look at the resumes.
Please, please.
We'll get that over to you guys ahead of time.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
With that, it's been busy. It's been Teacher Appreciation Week. We've gotten out to 2 of the 3 schools to do barbecue or burgers and hot dogs. For staff, as Mick mentioned earlier, we'll be doing Columbine next week. It was supposed to be today, but that didn't work out. We've had Had lots of fun going to other events. At Columbine, they did a math title night and had lots of fun games to help encourage kids to work on math. They were using playing cards and dice and coins and fishing in the dark and all sorts of other exciting things. And we kicked off, I know we had talked previously about doing some parent academies as far as outreach goes. And so we had a kind of a kickoff with that where Ginger had some books that she was able to provide to students there at Columbine. And then we were able to get some feedback from them on, we had a form for parents to fill out on what parent academies would be helpful and interesting to them for the next year. We also had a bingo card that she put together that kids will be able to take and complete over the summer. And if they complete it, they can get a prize when they come back. So ways that we can incentivize reading and literacy over the summer and try to minimize the slump that we typically see. Trying to think, we had prom. I did not attend, but we had other people who attended. Lindsay was there and took lots of pictures. It was dark, so I don't know how the pictures turned out. Yeah, a little dicey.
It didn't snow, so that's a plus.
That's always a plus. But yeah, it's been busy with awards, and we did CTE awards. We had the Honor Society and lots of other evening activities. I think that's most of what we have going on right now as far as that goes. I know Courtney's been working hard on the budget, and she'll give that presentation shortly.
And it's not done yet, the busy.
No, that's why I called that out.
All right, is anything else?
Good, thank you.
Okay, we are at the point of public comment. I'd like to read the public comment guidelines. Please be aware that any personnel or individual student matters are considered confidential under Colorado law, and it is out of respect of the law and our employees and students that we require those discussions take place privately in executive session. Individual comments are limited to 3 minutes or a total of 15 minutes for a particular topic. The intent of public comment is to give the Board of Education the opportunity to hear your comments. However, the board will make no decision or take no action on public comment during these meetings. Do we have a list?
We do.
All right, go.
Norm Michaels.
A longtime Teller County resident, and I'm here again tonight, once again to thank you, our local school board, for all that you do. You are not only directly responsible for improving the academic scores of our community, you are also directly responsible for improving our financial scores by reducing waste and combining schools to save money, our taxes. Over the past several years, you are directly responsible for removing pressure from outside unions being forced upon our teachers, enabling them to decide whether they would join or not. You are directly responsible for reinvigorating the social science of civics, dealing with the rights and duties of American citizens. Prior to your involvement, our graduating students knew more about Antifa's objectives than the objectives of our founding fathers. They were taught more about social justice for illegals than the origins of our justice system in America. I challenge you, our individual members of the school board, to put the students before your individual social media status. One or more of you has been using your position here to denigrate the others. Make yourself out to be the one who is on the board to stand for progressivism. Remember to put the students before yourself. Again, this board is here to ensure that our students learn how to think, not what to think. We pray to our Father in heaven that you will continue to be successful in your endeavors to make our young men and women successful. There are few callings greater than the importance of what you're doing here today.
Thank you.
Gail Garrett.
First, I'd like to say I have something in common with Mr. Westerholz. Sometimes my old ears fail to hear it adequately. In error, I mentioned at the last meeting that Ms. Wagner from Merit's board mentioned the word faith at the work session. I take time to verify statements, but this time, several reviews and even a second opinion did not catch the error. I apologize. That said, it's a reminder that statements here shouldn't mislead the public. At the work session, Merit representatives mentioned several times that persons were shocked at the school. That dramatic statement leaves a memorable negative impression. I will have to say too, it was mentioned at the task force meetings. But Mr. Salt said the following board meeting, 2 days later, that the problem had been taken care of, and he didn't know why it was mentioned. Another example is when the district sent out a statement saying the auditor found no fraud. Yes, but the auditor found 16 deficiencies and verbally stated several areas that could be looked at with a forensic audit. Saying a more accurate statement would have alerted the public to the significant problem with the district's handling of finance reporting. And finally, for Mr. Resterholz, I can answer his question about the cost of legal expenses last year. Legal expenses were $183,213. It was spent on, that was the total for the legal fees. $117,143 went to Brad Miller's law firm. That would have paid for a few teachers' salaries. It's unconscionable that this occurs, making Brad Miller wealthy, and shows teachers and students they aren't the first priority of this board. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. I'd like a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Barclay.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Kimbrough.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Resterholz.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, on to the next item. You're up again, Mr. Sol. Annual audit proposal.
Thank you. So every year we do an annual audit, and I know we've been talking a lot about audits, but that was for last year. Now we've got to do our audit for the 24-25 year. The proposal that you have is from Holting, they're the ones who have been doing our audit for several years, and so this is just an agreement, an engagement letter to continue working with them as we move forward. Any questions?
The only question I had, I know when they gave the report, was it last month? It's been a couple
Yes.
meetings since then. I think it was only just last month.
That was last month.
They mentioned a couple of things that I think we should make sure we're paying attention to. One, the fact that it took so long made it so that it cost double. So just making sure that we are, I know you're all working on it, but just making sure we have our ducks in a row so that we don't wind up paying double again or more than what is proposed here. And then the second thing they mentioned was that they had been giving reports to some of the board members. So I was not part of that group who was getting reports. So just making sure that this coming year, if they're providing reports to the board, that we're all included in that information. All the information I was getting was from Mr. Bay at the meetings, and apparently that was extremely inaccurate. And I wasn't aware of all the issues we were running into. So just making sure the communication is there so that we can act on things when we're running into issues earlier.
Well, and my hope is that we're not running into so many issues that need to be discussed, but I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
And I can tell you that our finance team is working on that. I know Courtney has already is it scheduled for next week or?
Yeah, talking to
To
The auditor.
from the auditor firm, just so we can start getting things situated and make a game plan so that we don't have to worry about it dragging on.
Or starting rate. I mean, we started extremely late, and
We
so
did.
if we can hopefully start earlier, then that would be.
Yeah, and we have some continuity here, even though we're looking at, hiring a full-time permanent CFO here. Courtney still is involved and will be able to help bridge that gap. And so we don't expect that this CFO transition is going to cause delays in the auditing process because of how we're currently situating ourselves with the auditors to be able to bring everything together.
Yes, a whole different set of circumstances this year, and a lot's was learned and being learned, so I'm more optimistic as we go into this new audit here. Anything else on that?
No, just need a motion.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the annual audit proposal?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Barclay.
Aye.
Bates.
Aye.
Kimbrough.
Aye.
Patterson. Aye. Westerholz.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, moving on to discussion and information. Board governance policy, EE7. Mr. Saul?
Thank you. So EE7, is really talking about the communication between the superintendent and district and the board. And so we have EE7 here lists 8 different ways that expectations in that communication. And so with this, I focused really just on the time since I've been in this role and not previously. And so based off of my tenure here, we believe that the district is in compliance with EE7 and it is presented as such. Were there any questions?
Well, I have heard that I received a text about you attending Kiwanis, so I know that you're out there and about and meeting with the community members and parents. I know with the parent academy that you're working towards that as well and the staff. So looking through, is there anything else that you guys want to add to it?
Didn't you attend Rotary as well?
We did, I did Rotary, I've done Kiwanis, I've met with Sheriff Mike Sell and Chief Diesler earlier this week. We have our stakeholder groups that we talked about that'll start next school year, so probably August or September. But this report really focuses more on communication between me and the board and not so
Yeah.
much the community engagement piece.
It mentions that as well, but yeah, number 5 is just you've been doing weekly communications with us, and I appreciate that.
So
Yeah, I think that's a big facet for the community. Yes, not in here.
does the format of those weekly emails, does that work well for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Everyone?
okay. So what, figured I'd ask while we're here. All right, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Saul? Moving on, the preliminary budget and scheduling of a public hearing. Ms. Crouch?
All right. FY '26 budget presentation. I like these to be informal, so if you have questions while I roll through this, feel free to stop me. A quick agenda overview so this is a presentation that I prepared. It's different from what is in your board packet. What is in your board packet was created for your consumption, but also for public review as well. What I will go over is all contained in that package, just maybe a little bit different format. We'll talk about the major assumptions, typically revenue and expenditure, We'll talk a little bit about what the impacts on the budget have been as a result of loss of city sales tax revenue. We will talk about budget summary. So at the end of the day, all of the inputs that go into this thing, what are the revenues, what are the expenditures, what is the projected net income for the year, and then key performance metrics that I track and budget to. Summary of assumptions, based on the April 2nd publication of CDE's funding estimates, PPR is coming in for Woodland Park School District at a little over $12,000 per student. They are estimating funded pupil count with a 4-year student average calculation of 1,775.7 students, 4 of whom are classified as extended high school. Total program funding is $21.9 million, almost $22 million. That is subject to the hold harmless that was part of the new school funding formula. What that means is the amount that was calculated for FY26 based on the $12,000 per pupil revenue amount, and the other adjustments that went into it actually ended up being less than your FY24-25 total program funding. So it resorts back to your FY25 total program funding. That's important to keep in mind because even though PPR went up, you're not actually getting to recognize that for the next fiscal year. Total local shares coming in at over 13 million. And so your total state share is coming in at 8.5 million.
I have some questions there since we're being informal. So the estimated students that's there, the 1,700, that's higher than our current student count. So are we saying that we're using that number because the state is funding pupils based on the rolling number and not on our actuals?
Correct. Four-year average.
Okay.
That was part of the funding, no. That was part of this year's School Finance Act that they would continue to recognize that 4-year average. They will consider reducing that to a 3-year average possibly next year as a mechanism to then be able to incorporate a larger percentage of the new funding formula. The new funding formula is going to cost about $581 million over 6 years. What they've done is they've decided to extend that to 7 years so that they can reduce the implementation cost this year from, I think, 18% or 19% down to 15%. This isn't a one-for-one swap. What they're trying to do is increase the amount of money that all students receive for special education. It's going to cost the state money. They just can't afford to do it as quickly as they would like to, given the deficit that they face this year and possibly future years, but they'll think about that tomorrow. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, wait, I don't think we're gonna have that many students. Let's not
No.
overestimate there.
No.
Okay.
All right, and these numbers are coming directly from even the total program funding and the total state share numbers are coming directly from CDE.
Okay.
So I'm not doing any calculations other than to walk myself through understanding how they're coming up with their numbers. And then on the expenditures side, salaries reflect an approximate 10% reduction in workforce across the entire organization. And then when we move beyond salaries, which also directly impacts benefits, other expenditure assumptions have been calculated in this budget based on previous year budget. So what I do is I look at the previous year budget, I look at the previous year audit or expected year-end totals. And then I take a snapshot of year-to-date actuals and extrapolate it out. And then I do a comparison. When I have more years of very granular data, I can look account by account and go, yeah, that might be a little bit high this year, but I know that year over year, we've done this or we've done that. And so I can safely assume that the assumption is correct. This tends to be a little bit more reliant on the audit than it does, and the actuals than it does maybe what the revised budget had been, simply because that's all I have to go on. So I don't want to underestimate expenditures, just like I don't want to overestimate revenue.
How close would you say our estimates for the 24-25 year were to what our actuals are looking? You know, we're almost to the end of this fiscal
The
year.
Previous year's budget.
Using the previous year's budget?
Well, just like, no, just in general, right? Like, so we approved a budget for this school year. How close were our estimates there to what our actuals are looking like?
I think you end up coming under appropriations. However, there are some accounts that were underestimated on the expenditure side. Property was one of them. And then the 0400 and I think 0700 accounts were a little underestimated. So I'm working to make adjustments back up to an amount that makes sense.
Okay.
In general, your total property costs should be about 20% of your entire budget. And it was well below that. So
The estimate was below that.
yeah.
And property, that means like repairs, maintenance and things,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, acquisition, repairs, all of those types of things.
So it brings it up to the actuals then, right?
Yes, that's where I'm working to get you.
Thank you.
It can sometimes be a little iterative through these budget processes. Any others? Okay. With that said, however, one-time outlay expenditures, so like if you did a roof repair, that was incorporated into the actuals, I removed that because that's not something that you have to do in years going forward.
This kind of goes ahead of you, but in one of the information pages, there's some discussion on facility repairs and costs there. Were those, have you seen that? And are those currently included in the proposed budget?
So I can speak to that. They were not included in the proposed budget.
Okay.
We had to make sure that our expenses met what our projected revenue are, and so we just don't have the deep pockets to handle some of those expenses. But there are things that we're tracking. We're looking at, we talked about it last year. We did some information into like the BEST grant is one that we're looking at applying that would help with some of these expenses.
Okay.
Among other grant opportunities, we're looking for other ways so that we can actually address these facilities issues.
Yep.
We just can't do it in our operations budget right now.
Okay, I was just curious if they
The
were already
best grant
included.
would be great. I know we spoke about that, but have you guys actually reached out for estimates or that, for that information, or is that just sort of,
Some
from
of
the
those,
district?
yeah, so that came from Jason. So some of those came from estimates that he had received. Some of those are just
Okay,
best guess based off of his experience.
okay. I was curious about that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to jump ahead, but yeah.
No, and I will say the BEST grant doesn't solve problems because it is a match grant. So we have to have 50-ish%
Mhm.
of what we're getting.
Mhm.
So when you look at saying, it's gonna cost us, I'm making these numbers up, $5 million to replace roof X, and we're getting that from the BEST grant, we still have to have $2.5 million to put into that. So we talk about some of these grants and they sound great, and they are great opportunities, but we still need other funding sources and ways to be able to match and be able to meet those expenses.
Any others?
And so as we're still looking for a CFO and those are incorporated.
Oh,
into the
yes,
budget
yes,
and
I-
for salaries and.
Yep. I maintain placeholders for funded but unfilled positions.
So of note, CFO and our grants position are both placeholders in this
Perfect.
budget for next year.
Very good.
Assuming the full year?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yep. All right,
Full year.
Well, I mean, we're anticipating hiring early in the year. Sometimes you budget for
Yeah,
half year
no.
because you think it's gonna take a while.
No, and especially because
Close
I
on the
believe we're
CFO.
very, very close on the CFO search. I'm
Yeah.
optimistic that of the two candidates will have someone. So they would be in here presumably before the end of the year. One of them, like I said, is an out-of-state candidate, so not sure exactly what timing that looks like. It may be closer to the end of the school year, but we anticipate before July 1.
Okay.
The other one works locally, and so there's some more flexibility in how that gets handled. The grants position, we're anticipating July 1 start date. We haven't budgeted for that, but we have not posted or hired for that yet. Like I said, I think we talked about this before, that we have an internal employee currently that we have talked to about transitioning into that role, which then we just want to know which positions we need to actually post and fill or fill through that. But we are anticipating the full school year for both of those positions.
I would only make an adjustment in the budget for a salary-related expenditure if I know for sure in going into the revised budget, if I know for sure that we're only having to pay for 0.75 of the year or something like that. Again, conservative budgeting says you overestimate your expenditures.
I have I mean, this isn't, well, I mean, it is a biggie to the athletic, but do you anticipate the athletic fees to go up? And is it incorporated in the budget like that?
That would be reflected in probably a 1,700 like participation fee, but I didn't see any sort of granular data on how that's calculated.
No, and we don't collect those directly. They go through our school for collecting all those fees, then we get checks cut back. And so that would be in the revenue side. We're not expecting much change in how that participation handles.
And I have just one more.
Yeah, no worries.
down. The cash flow loan, is that being paid off? It's supposed to be what, we have till June?
Yeah, but it pays pretty immediately. So
Okay.
they
So-
know when you get your property tax payments. And so it's almost within weeks that they're asking for repayment of the loan. So it doesn't hang out there for very long.
Okay, so it's already been done, I assume.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, and so.
That's what I was gonna ask, about if that actually went through.
Yeah, and so then that's actually really nice because it doesn't carry over on your books. So it's done by the end of the fiscal year. You don't have to worry about it existing as some sort of payable out there in your audit.
Okay.
All right, impacts on budget as a result of loss in revenue. Couple of things we're going to talk about. I already mentioned the 10% reduction in workforce. More of a restructuring across the entire organization to take advantage of efficiencies, while also maintaining all academic and extracurricular activities, so no impacts there. Limited impact on student opportunities, while reducing the entire workforce by about 10%. What that ends up resulting in is a reduction in total salary and benefits expenditure costs to the district of over $1 million. So that was a pretty significant chunk. Along those same lines, no salary increases going into next year. So this proposed budget does not accommodate any salary increases that would be in line with inflation. And then the other,
Can I ask a question real quick?
yes,
When you said reduction in our income for the school district, and is this directly responsible for the 10% reduction in workforce? No raises for our teachers. Is that reduction the direct decision of the Woodland Park City Council to repeal are sales tax funds of over $3 million? Or is that something else?
It is driving this.
Okay, so their unilateral decision to stand against the voters costs us those that 10% reduction in workforce, letting teachers go, and they are the ones responsible for not giving our teachers raises. You don't really have to answer that, but
I'm not going to.
that's what's driving.
I would say that as a board, we should probably just focus on working with what we have instead of pointing fingers. It makes us look childish and it doesn't help us achieve our goals.
Well, I absolutely disagree with that, but I understand what you're saying.
I'm going to speak up here. It's having a profound impact, and we are of the opinion, we're not being babies. We were following the IGA to a T, and when we had a problem early on, we had 30 days to cure that, and we cured it in 13 days. So it's not being a baby at all that they were outside of their jurisdiction pulling that monies, because they are tasked primarily, they are the person that collects the money and brings it to us, and that's all. And for many of the things they did, in my opinion, were way out of line. So, but I don't think that's being childish, Keegan.
Well,
That's just the facts on the ground.
well, they did repeal it. That is a fact.
Yes.
But I think there's a lack of accountability when we say it's their fault. And I don't want to get into it too much more because there is current litigation. I don't think it's appropriate
That is
for us
correct.
to discuss it any further. So I think we should just stop pointing fingers and look at what our budget is and work with the numbers we have. That's all.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, but I respect your opinion.
Moving along.
Alrighty then. The next area of reduction, or where we'll target more deliberate expenditure allocation, is going to be deferred maintenance. Capital outlay for maintenance has either been greatly reduced or cut altogether. And this is going to, I think what this ends up doing, and what I like to do, is instead of allocating Fund 43 at the beginning of a budget year, I like to allocate Fund 43 at the end of a budget administration period, when I know what the projected net income is and what the projected net income margin will be. And so what you're doing is you're grabbing some of that change in fund balance at the end of the year, putting it into your Fund 43 account or fund, so that you can then allocate that amount in the next fiscal year without it impacting your operational budget. Right now, because you're pulling it out of your operational budget at the beginning of the year, you're taking that money away. So if we can start to shift that Fund 43 allocation towards the end of the year, when we know exactly how much you're gonna have at the end of the year, then it's more of a pay it forward for the next year rather than paying it back to yourself all year long. So we'll work on this throughout the year. But as the result of some of these other areas where we've had to cut, Fund 43 allocation for this fiscal year was reduced to 250,000.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was for last year. So, all right, any questions there?
So that 250,000, is that based off of the excess we think we're gonna have
Yes.
finishing this year?
Yep. Yeah, I whittled it down as low as I could go without making myself sweat. All right, so you guys do have the budget summary, and that's what this is, just a cut version of it, showing total revenue, total expenditures. When you look at it, it looks a little little bit deceptive here, because I show the transfers out of the general fund separately from total expenditures, because that's not what they are. They're just simply inter-fund transfers. So at the end of the day, your total expenditures are not just 19 million, it's 19 million plus that 9 million in transfer, leaving you with a change in fund balance, positive change in fund balance of $22,055. It looks a little scary, I know, but what I have found in actual budget administration, when you have strong financial leadership, is that this number ends up at the end of the year being significantly higher. But this is also a reflection, I don't want to make any promises, it's also a reflection of very conservative budgeting. I never like to overestimate on the revenue side, and I never like to underestimate on the expenditure side.
And I'm gonna just cut in here and just remind everyone that we will do an amended budget in January. That's the way that normal process goes. And so as we get through the first half of this fiscal year, we'll have a better idea of how all of these numbers are starting to shake out. Any positions that we might have budgeted for that we didn't get filled 100%, we'll have some deltas in there. And so we'll be able to come back to the board in January with that amended budget and give you a better update of kind of how things are going and where we can reallocate some funds if needed. So if we need to put some more in Fund 43, we can do that. I don't want to say much more because I don't want to jinx anything, but all that to say, I appreciate the work that Courtney's done in creating this budget. I appreciate the work from the building leaders and the principals. When we talk about staffing cuts, this was stuff that we did in conjunction with them. This was really more of a partnership and conversation through this, and not just saying, hey, we've got to get rid of people. That wasn't our intent. That wasn't just the result of trying to balance the budget. So I do want to recognize, just appreciate the work that we did, both with the principals, with Courtney, and some of the other leadership team across the district to make this happen. These were steep cuts. These were not feel good things, but we got where we needed to go. And I'm hoping we've got some good news in January from an amended budget perspective, that we will have some extra dollars that we can reinvest into different funds for the district.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I would add, during that revision process, I mentioned very briefly in preparation of this budget, I look at actuals, year-to-date actuals, and then extrapolate. I do the exact same thing when I revise the budget. And this revision going into, or this fiscal year budget revision, will be very deliberate, very painful, because we will go line by line by line. We'll just go through that rigor. One, for the benefit of the new CFO, I can't always answer questions about every single specific account, but I can come pretty darn close. That is where he should be, or she.
This is sort of off topic, but how is things going with the new system and the transferring over for accounting?
It is going. There are going to be some pain points with respect to data migration. And I'm working on that right now, just to make sure that everything that we know to be true as of the date of migration is reflected in the new system, so that that doesn't become a pain point for the audit. That is my main concern. And that is primarily why I'm going to start a conversation with our auditor next week, so that he and I can outline the best way forward, knowing that that transition took place in the middle of a fiscal year.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah, and kind of going along with that, I have a couple of questions, but going along with that one, I did have a couple of teachers reach out with concerns about reimbursements and payments coming through, that some of it was delayed, and the reason given was because of the transition. Is that still true? Has that been taken care of, or when can we expect?
They're being taken care of on a case-by-case basis. I'm seeing the emails coming through, and the financial accounting payroll vendor, K-12, I'm seeing those responses. And I've tracked every single email with a question or a request or anything like that, and I've seen a positive response come through. And if I haven't, then I reach out. But they've been really good about responding to those issues.
Yeah, so a couple things. I was gonna say, one, every issue that we're aware of, I believe has been taken care of. So if there's other ones, reach out to us because we are getting them handled fairly quickly once we know about them. The other thing, and I know this has been a pain point for a lot of staff, are pay stubs are not available. We have copies of pay stubs that we can send to individuals. Effectively, there's 2 spots for emails. What we had in the old system were all personal emails. We want accounts tied to personal emails, so if you depart from the district and you want tax information, you can still access tax information. The problem is if we only have personal emails in there, then if you submit a PO and you get a PO request, confirmation back, then it goes to your personal email because that's the only one for that account in the system. And so we're having to go employee by employee to get their district emails put in. And so there's 2 different email inboxes effectively. And so that's the delay in trying to get the access to the pay stubs into the system, is so that we can make sure that we have it appropriately bifurcated between official district business going to district accounts, and then the personal tax, pay, time off, those things available in the personal accounts. And so it's just taken a little bit of time based off of the data we had in Alio and how that got migrated over. So we are working on that actively. We're getting through it as quickly as we can. It's just taken some time to get through. We had 500 some odd employees that were in the system because it covers the past year. And so it's just taking time to get through. So those are the big issues that I'm aware of that we're still trying to, aside from the migration piece, but that we're working through. But again, we've been able to handle those one-off as they come in. So if anyone needs copies of your pay stubs, we have them and can send them to you. We've done that for many employees already.
Yeah, and then just the general finance at WPSDK12.org is the best way to reach out, because K-12 has access to those emails, so they see them come in as well.
Okay, thank you.
So the other question I had, when we're talking about, or when, obviously you have to work your employees based on your budget, and RIFs are never fun. I'm curious though, when we were looking at what we're reducing, did we discuss, and by we I mean you all who are working on the budget, discuss our lawyers at all?
No. You have a sec though.
Because I think there's probably some opportunity there to pull back on some of the expenses that we currently have. And, maybe be able to do some of the repairs that the buildings need, or fund some of the extra activities by being smarter with how we're spending our money there.
So I can jump in and say we're not, we've reduced the amount of workflow between the district and the attorneys since I've taken over. As an example, the attorneys were involved in agenda setting meetings before. They're not involved in that now. So we've been working to chip away at some of.
We pull back the core requests.
We have seen a fairly strong reduction in the core requests that have been coming through. I think some of the efforts that we've gone to just trying to be more transparent, making information available on the website has really proven, like, the information is accessible.
Yeah.
We still get them. I'd say we're probably averaging 1 a week, maybe 2 a week.
It is reduced.
It's a pretty substantial reduction over the last few weeks. So all of these are things that will roll down and make an impact on the budget. That helps.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, because I know we've had some of the lawyers help us with like contracts in the past as well, but they're not necessarily experts in employment law. So some of our contracts have not been as favorable to the district as they might have been. And so one of the things I had looked into, and Mick, I sent you information on this, was partnering with Employers Council. So they're like the leading employment law specialists here in Colorado. The company I work for utilizes them as well, just to make sure we're, you know, on the up and up and have lawyers backing us when we write, you know, our handbooks or things like that. And because of the number of employees we have, we could get enterprise membership, which is unlimited access to all of their templates, unlimited access to lawyers for consultations on employment. They'll read over contracts, they'll help us write it, they'll do training sessions, and it's like little over $8,000 for the year for unlimited access. So,
and to be perfectly honest, your CFO should be able to generate contracts. Maybe a template is reviewed by an attorney once, and then from that template, all contracts can be generated. Your CFO should be very familiar with how to write HR policy so that you're in compliance with state law. And so it takes a lot of the burden that you place on consultants in the form of lawyers when you've got a CFO who can capably handle those tasks as well.
were you asking questions about that when you interviewed the CFO?
Yes, but I think more specifically along the lines of how familiar are you with contracts and how familiar are you and comfortable are you with HR functions? So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we asked some more general questions. A lot of the questions we asked on the specific side was really around finance policy, fund accounting, the parts that we
Right,
really
you were
need.
asking them for.
We asked some more general questions, and both of the individuals that we have coming in have some HR experience and oversight.
Mhm.
And so we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper into that in the next round.
Yeah.
But each of the individuals that we have do have experience there that was part of that initial round.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, even companies like the company I work for, we have a pretty expansive HR team really for the size of our company, and we're still utilizing these experts in employment law to make sure, we aren't making a mistake by having like the wrong one word in a document or, saying the wrong thing, right? Like it's nice to have that backup. And for 8,000, when you look at the fact that we spend, over 183,000 on lawyers for various things, but $8,000 would be minimal. And if that can reduce some of the lawsuits we've seen over the last few years, I think that's a good spend.
Something we're working on is to break down those attorneys' fees to some degree. I mean, for example, we don't turn all CORAs over to the attorneys. It's just something where there's some liability or, some risk involved. We don't engage them on each and every CORA, but and I also had hoped to break this down for what expenses that we have no control over. For example, lawsuits and various things that I'm going to work on getting that breakdown, and we'll see what it says. I don't know what it's going to say.
Yeah.
But we hear this question a lot about our attorney's fees, and our attorneys just had to go to the Supreme Court of Colorado regarding an older case, and I don't take full responsibility for some of the things that we're having to spend on attorneys. Of course, there are needs for them, and they do a good job of it. But I'm working on those numbers, and we'll follow up as soon as we have something.
Yeah, just when we look back a couple years before we hired Miller, our attorney's fees per year were somewhere around $17,000 to $20,000. And, this last year we spent $183,000. So there's room for us to cut back. We weren't in all these lawsuits prior. We weren't getting sued. So there are things we can do and we can take responsibility for to make sure that we are doing the right thing so that no one has a reason to sue us. And
Well, there were some big changes to the approach on some issues regarding the whole district. So, when it's business as usual, those things don't necessarily come up. But clearly, there have been some changes that have dictated some of that. So, you know, we can look back at the past, but you've got to include all of the facts around what's going on versus what we're spending. Thank you.
All right, and the last thing I'll touch on are the key performance metrics that I track and budget to throughout the year. Projected change in fund balance, 22,055. That is a positive change in fund balance, so that will increase your year-end fund balance to 8.28 million, 8.29 million. Salaries and benefits as a percentage of total budget, CDE recommends anywhere in the range of 50 to 70%, and you are sitting at 51%. So that is good. Instructional spending and support spending. This is a big one that I like to track and brief to during monthly financial briefs, et cetera, et cetera. 57-43. That's a great ratio. I like to be as close to that 60-40 range as possible, and this budget is putting you right there. So that's great. Any other questions?
The other question I had was around the transportation. I'm just curious if there's been any discussion with the transportation companies to make sure that we can get neighborhood buses for the kids that no longer can go to Gateway. We've sent them to Summit. This year, there were no neighborhood buses for a lot of those kids. And so, you know, they had difficulty, some of them choiced out because of that. Just curious if we're addressing that at all this year.
We haven't started the routing side for next year yet, but we'll bring it up to the busing company when we get into that phase.
I would say that, yeah, we should make sure we're giving equal transportation, at least opportunities to all of our students.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Good job. Okay, next item is the superintendent search process. I sent out an email to everyone that I was hoping that we planned it out a ways for June 4th to interview. What we have right now are 2 candidates, and so to interview. So, you know, I will have to have a discussion about when people are available at that time. One of the firms, he's hoping he can do it as early in the day as possible, and the other ones can be flexible. So I spoke to them today. So take a look at your calendars and tell me what your availability is on June 4th, and you know what parts of the day you're available, and then I'll respond to these people. But we have a couple of pretty good search firms in line. One, most people in our region are familiar with. The other one's a newer one that was recommended that I did have a Zoom meeting with. I thought, I appreciated it. I thought they had done a pretty good job. So we'll be doing that on June 4th, as we were hoping to. Other than that, I don't have any other updates on it. I mean, it's something we've been working on, but it's just not something that,
I don't know, this might have been part of the email thread, but I just wanted to make sure if anyone had additional firms they wanted to make sure were included in that search, to make sure that they got sent over to Mick so he could schedule that.
well, and there would still be time for that. I don't know of a third, but maybe someone else does. If you do, bring it to me. We'll try to get him in there to give us a proposal. Yeah, you're right. We talked about up to 3 to look at. I just don't have I don't have a third one. One of the 2 was recommended, McPherson.
So I can be, if we book things early, I can make myself available for the whole day, so just let me know. And then the other thing I would request is that we work on scheduling a work session prior to that, so that we can have a pretty solid job description ready for them so that they can take a look at it and we can ask them too for suggestions if they have any.
So, just speaking from my experience, when we hired in 20, that was part of the fee that you pay was helping develop that job description. So you can have something to propose. I'm not telling you not to, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's usually part of the services they provide is helping to create that.
Yeah.
Well, that's my understanding.
One of the firms that we ended up using did a lot of stakeholder meetings and interviewed board members and leadership from across the district. I think parents and some other, I don't remember who all was involved. But I know the consultant we had probably spent 2 or 3 days at the district office with one-on-one interviews going through to try to gather information to help develop just a lot of the information, not just this, it was partly for the job description, but also, you know, what kind of questions, because they developed the questions for the interviews and the whole thing. And so that was just sort of them getting that community feedback to best serve the district that they're in. So if you're gonna pay for it, you may as well let them do it.
And the one group that I did have a Zoom meeting with, talked about their, what they can do on the front. And then after you've got your superintendent hired, they've got a program to go along and see how things are going. But they suggested that they would provide the service that you just asked for.
And this is the very first time that Woodland Park School District has hired an outside consultant to hire a superintendent, correct?
Well, yes, because I mean, the last time one was used was
When?
for Mr. Neal, but this
Oh, they
board,
did use one?
yes, well.
I think we
they used-
paid a fee to Miller when you brought Whit in.
But even
A finder's fee.
McPherson, even with Superintendent Neal, they've done this previously. It's not been like a new thing.
Okay.
Yes,
Most school districts utilize search firms.
yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot about that, as Keegan just said, you know, that McPherson is a commonly known name. And that's pretty typical to hire one of these groups to help in that process. Okay, any other questions before we move on? All right then, Mr. Salt, let's talk about our forensic audit proposals.
Thank you. So we provided one forensic audit proposal back in April. And it was requested to get a couple more proposals. We reached out to 3 Candace reached out to 3 other firms. She had reached out to CDE and a couple other people to get names. We ended up doing meetings with 2 of them, kind of gave them the same speech that we had given Ide Bailey, that initial proposal that you got, so that we were as apples to apples as we could. One other firm we spoke to but never got anything scheduled with. They just didn't reach back out to get something scheduled. They reached out, I think it was earlier this week, and said, hey, if you want to get something, it's like, we're kind of late here. So all that to say, they were still interested in engaging this 3rd firm that we haven't spoken to. So if you want a 3rd proposal, we can push this out more, that's fine. But only one of the other people actually provided a proposal for this. That's why there's only one more here, is no one else provided proposals.
I would be interested in seeing the 3rd one,
Okay.
only because this one has like a phase 2 as well, where I don't think our first proposal did, so I wasn't really interested in this one as much because of that, but I do say the initial pricing was about the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then when I saw the phase 2 product, I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Where that was not offered in the.
That was
first.
something that Candace and I kind of talked about was, it was a little unsettling to say kind of how open-ended it was.
Yeah, it's very open-ended where there was no other estimate of it, there's no pricing, and to sign something and still not get a completion of what you've paid for, I don't think that would be appropriate, so I would not vote for this one at all.
It almost seemed like though, again, with the 2 phases, that we already kind of have completed phase 1 with our initial audit, or like our initial audit identified high risk, financial irregularities, which is what they quoted us for in phase 1, where it looks like we only actually need the phase two because we've already pulled all that
Right.
information already.
That's actually what I was gonna say is the
Yeah.
first proposal we got was effectively a phase two approach where they didn't
Mhm.
charge us for phase one. We sent them the audit, they did a full review of the audit, and they came back and said, these are the risk points we see, and here's what we're gonna charge you to do the forensic audit side of that. Where this group is saying, we're still gonna charge you to do this.
Basically, they're doing the audit again and
Correct.
then digging in
It's
for the
like
forensics.
doubling in and then not even giving us an estimate for phase two. So when I read all that, I was like, I'm not gonna vote
Nope,
for this, so.
That's fine, so
Okay.
we'll reach out, Candace, like I said, I think it was earlier this week they were talking, so we'll reach back out to them and see if we can see how quickly we can get another proposal, and then we'll try to bring that third one in June.
And if we get it earlier, can we discuss that earlier? I don't think we need to wait.
We can send it out, but you won't be able to make a decision until June unless we could do a special meeting if that's what you want to do to make that decision.
It could come to that.
We'll just let you know once we get it.
Okay.
We'll put pressure on them to get it to us as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So, all right, that was it. I just wanted to make sure you understood why we only had one extra
Mhm.
proposal and see if you guys wanted us to continue to pursue the third one, just kind of engaged a little late.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
That's all we have. I'm sure everyone probably looked at the operations report. There are a lot of expenses coming up this summer, and they're important ones. Jason is actually doing a very good job of prioritizing things. We've got some boiler issues right now. The high school has 2 down. He stayed here till 9 o'clock the other night and got one of them going, so he's a superhero. 10 o'clock? Yeah. And then that was after he had been the chef for one of the barbecues.
Day.
Appreciation day.
Yes, yes. And, so, I mean, I want to say something that I've said before, but for almost 2 decades, property maintenance was kicked down the road. I mean, they didn't have the money either, and it was kicked down the road. And when this board came in here, we said at some point here, we've got to start paying the fiddler. And we started doing that, but the list is long. I don't know how many people have looked at that report from 2022, but there are a lot of needs. And I spoke to Jason at one of the barbecues, and he wants to take a couple of us board members on a tour and just show us all of the things. So it's going to help us get our heads around it. And I doubt we would change the priorities. He knows better than us. But I appreciate him. He's on top of it, and I was totally impressed. He got one of them going. The other one, he's got to wait for parts, or he might have stayed till 10 the next morning. But and then today he was over at Merritt working on a boiler. So there's no end to maintenance. Everyone's aware of that. Anything else from anyone? There be Mr. Rusterholz. Anything?
No, sir, thank you.
All right.
Mayor, can I just add that we have posted on our school website the opening for the at-large, the new board member for the BOCES board.
Very good.
Will be a 5-member board with the new AU, 2 from Cripple Creek, 2 from Winter Park, and 1 at large. And there is an opening posted for, and the criteria to be eligible to be on the board, and that will, I do believe, we will do the interviews. I'm not sure yet, I think on the 20th. And so we can have this new board member in place by July 1st when the AU takes effect.
Very good point. Okay, there being nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Hartney,
Hi.
Bates,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Rusterholz.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Candace.
Have a good night, thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Please, sir.
No, thank you.
Why is it so peaceful tonight?
Snow.
Well,